Hi, everyone. My name is Sunny Mullen with Help Hope Live. I am the Director of Outreach. Thank you for joining us today for our Hope Talk about life post-transplant and why our community has to continue to fundraise post-transplant. We will give everyone a minute or so to gather their bearings, get into the room, and then we will get started. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available to anyone who is registered and will also live on our YouTube page. So that will be fully available to everyone as well within about 24 hours. But we really appreciate you guys all being here today. And we'll just give it a little bit more. Let's, you know what? It's 3:01 Eastern, guys. Let's get this thing started. We have a handful of our community with us today. We may be having one more join us, but we will just start from here. We have two of our Help Uplift clients / brand ambassadors, Pat McEntee and Rachelle Ledbetter, and we have one of our client services coordinators, Melanie Johnson. So I will let them introduce themselves. And Pat and Rachelle, if you could introduce yourselves and kind of let us know when were you transplanted and how long have you been fundraising with Help Hope Live? Rachelle?
Yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Rachelle Ledbetter, and I was transplanted May 1st of what year? 2021. And I started fundraising pre-transplant about 2017. So I was a good 4 or 5 years of fundraising prior to that. And I still continue to fundraise even after.
Pat?
Hi, everybody. My name is Pat McEntee, and I'm a heart transplant recipient. I had my transplant in 2017 at the Cleveland Clinic. Prior to that, I was actually on the waiting list for my heart transplant for 3 years. And I was told about Help Hope Live by my social worker, and that led me to contact them, find out more about them, and began fundraising with them in early 2015. So for about 2.5 years, I had a head start to get ready for my transplant, which was very important considering the amount of bills that racked up in that time while I was waiting, and then obviously with the transplant.
And Mel?
Hi, I'm Melanie, and I am with Help Hope Live. I've been here for about 6 years and enjoy working with the clients, talk to them about different ways to fundraise and different ideas, brainstorming, and it's a journey for sure. Every day is different.
Absolutely. So before we get into the meat of it, a little bit of housekeeping. We do have a Q&A section for our attendees. If you have any questions for our panelists, feel free to please put your questions in there and we will be sure to get to them. And we also, and that will be how we're going. So let's get started here. Rachelle and Pat, since I know you both had a pre-transplant journey, did you by the time you were talking about even being transplanted, was fundraising even on your mind at all? And once you got going pre-transplant, did you ever think that you'd have to be fundraising post-transplant? Rachelle, take this up first.
Okay, I will. When I first was looking at getting transplanted, I was at UCSF, and I spoke with the social worker, and I told her we had concerns about financial needs and that we were on a limited income, and insurance would cover the transplant, but how would it cover the housing, the needed housing after transplant, the excess medical expenses that aren't covered by my insurance. So I began probably about 4.5, 5 years before I got the transplant because they suggested it. And for me, pre-transplant fundraising was easy. I live in a small town. I have a small community. I have a team of family members and friends who worked really diligently to get me some funds. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, Sunny. I've already forgotten them, but I'm just
you absolutely are.
I apologize. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I know you were going to say I can read your mind. You apologize for the background noise. Not a problem, Rachelle. But in all of that and with that wonderful community, did you guys ever think post-transplant? And
Oh,
I'm
heck
sure
no.
you were just trying to
No.
get to transplant, let alone post-transplant.
Well, I was barely living. I mean,
Yeah.
I was living with a 50-foot line, and I was in my house. I was just trying to survive and by the grace of God get lungs. But my husband thought about it, but he never talked to me about it. We were just talking about that in the car as we came here. I never thought about it, honestly. I didn't think about, anything comes up, it's like, for me, it's the skin cancer that makes me, I have to do my monthly trips, which I'm 3.5 hours away from my transplant center. I actually ended up being transplanted at UCLA. So it's like the skin cancer, the Mohs surgery, the monthly appointments. And then I have a specialist that's going to do my eye. It has some basal carcinoma in it. And it's ongoing for me. And then the trips to UCLA. I mean, every time we go, we have to get a hotel or 1 or 2 nights, travel expenses. And then we still have to pay some money towards our prescriptions and towards our medical bills. And on a limited retired income, it's expensive. Never thought about it. I just wanted to live. Never thought about it.
Well, and with as proactive as it seems your medical professionals were being pre-transplant and having you fundraise, did anyone ever mention anything post-transplant to you?
If they did, I don't recall.
Yeah.
If they did, I don't recall. I just remember talking with the social worker. She gave me a brochure for Help Hope Live. And of course, I immediately called like the next day. It was the day of your gala that I called.
Geez. Nice.
And somebody called me back immediately, which was pretty phenomenal because you guys were preparing for the gala, the yearly gala. And so I just remember get some funds in place now.
Yeah.
Never even considered post.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there'd be post. I didn't know if I was going to have a post. Yeah.
And that's a great point. Pat, how about you? And you said your social worker suggested Help Hope Live, and again, in the transplant community, they're doing so much to prepare you for transplant. What was it like? And much like Rachelle, you were just trying to live. So what was that process like?
Yeah, I was a lot sicker than I thought I was. And when you go for a transplant, the assessment that they have to do at the beginning is very lengthy and thorough. And part of it is to see a social worker, which, looking back is extremely important. That part of it, obviously they know what they're doing. But anyway, it almost was an afterthought that she mentioned, oh yeah, there's this group called Help Hope Live, and they help fundraising. And I have to admit, I don't think I really had thought about it much. I just kind of knew, like, we're going to need some help with this. I know we have insurance. My insurance was pretty good at the time. But I just knew that, you still have out-of-pocket max and all of this stuff. And actually the first place that I was referred for transplant assessment was in Indiana. And I went there and we had a great meeting. And then I got home and I had a phone call from him saying that, well, we would love to help you, but we can only cover you up to 80%, 80% up to $100,000, which, if you know anything about transplants, that's a drop in the bucket as far as what it costs. It's at least $1 million to get a heart transplant. So, that was just really out of the question. So I think that was probably the first point at which I was really aware, like, this could go, and really, if it happens and I owe $1 million, well, okay, I guess I'll send you a check for $100 a month until I die, and then somebody else can take over those payments. But anyway, I did end up at the Cleveland Clinic where my insurance covered a lot more of the thing. But I found out, in those 3 years that I was waiting, I found out there's a lot of different things that come into play. There's a lot of unexpected bills that will come your way, and they definitely did. And thank God I had Help Hope Live to help fundraise. so I had a pretty good, I don't want to call it a nest egg, but I had a pretty good amount built up going into transplant to where my wife and I did not have to worry about like, how are we going to pay for this? And we could really just kind of focus on being prepared,
Yeah.
as be as healthy as possible going in, being as mentally prepared going in, and not having to worry about the financial side of things.
And that's great. And like you guys both said, you were simply just trying to get to the point that you get transplanted and continue living. Why should you even have to think about post-transplant and post fundraising at this point? Melanie, how are those conversations? Because I know at Help Hope Live, we can help clients pre-transplant, during transplant, post-transplant. And I'm sure those conversations that you're having are very different. And how are you engaging with people as they're coming to you?
So every transplant client is different. Their journey is different. And educating and engaging your community is so important from the beginning. Both Rachelle and Pat were incredibly lucky that they started as early as they did. I have people who call up who were just called in for their transplant and they want to start fundraising, which is after the fact sometimes because some are still waiting, some have already had it. But really, despite where you start, it's where you continue to go on your journey. And that's what's most important because both of them said they had no idea that they would still need to be fundraising after. You don't know. Some people's recuperation's completely clean. You don't need anything. You might need some co-pays. You might have a few $1,000s left from what you were using prior. So you have to take each client individually. But one of the things I really like to say to people is that when you get your transplant, your journey is just starting. It's just a different journey. And looking to see whether or not you need to continue to fundraise, having those funds, regardless of where your recuperation takes you, is just peace of mind. So we try to give you all the tools that you need. We work with you and we work with you as an individual. Yes, there are certain things that we tell everyone, but when you're working with a client, their story is different, their recuperation is different, their community is different. So you have to take all of that into account. And their concerns are different. I mean, both Pat and Rachelle, plus another client of mine whose concern was her pictures look too good. She had her transplant, and everybody's saying, you look pretty healthy. Why should we still give you money? You have to address all of these because remember, you're asking people to give you hard-earned money at a time when so many people are struggling. And people want to be generous, but you have to engage them and educate them. No one wants to cross the street when they see you coming because you have your hand out. And that's a good analogy to keep in mind when you think about the people you're trying to reach.
Yeah. And so Pat and Rachelle, you've each talked a little bit about your post-transplant or just starting into your post-transplant journeys. And Rachelle, you mentioned your journey with skin cancer. And I will say this whole conversation came about as a suggestion from you because you mentioned that 50-foot line that you used to carry around. And visibly, you looked sick. People could tell you had oxygen. You were waiting for those lungs. And then all of a sudden you didn't have that oxygen tank with you anymore. And how were people supposed to know that you were still going through this skin cancer journey? How was that for you in navigating, not looking sick anymore, but yet still being sick and still being on this post-transplant journey? And how do you engage your community still to be able to continue those fundraising efforts?
I'm a big believer in social media. And so I've people want to know what's going on with me. They go to my Facebook page. I have 2 different pages. And then I also am now using Instagram. And I try to educate them in little snippets. I'll talk to them about skin cancer awareness. I'll talk to them about, I actually do fundraisers and I tell them, I may look healthy and I may look good, but I'm not healed and I never will be. I'm trading one for another, and it's just educating them. It's educating them. And like Melanie was saying, people see me because I post pictures now that I'm doing so well. I'll post pictures of me with hiking poles, hiking up something, or on my e-bike and biking up into the mountains or something, or playing pickleball or walking on the lake. And so everyone thinks, well, gosh, you look great. Why do you need money still? And And well, you know what? I do still need money, and here's why. And so
Yeah.
it's educating them. And I have a lot of people who know that and understand that, but I'm at the point where I don't really want to ask them for money. I'm in the midst of a fundraiser right now, and I had a local design some t-shirts, and I'm selling the t-shirts so that at least they get something for their money.
Yeah.
And I've had people donate to my Help Hope Live fund. I don't want a t-shirt, but here, I'll give you this, I'll donate to your fund. And
That's
of course,
awesome.
that's always more than the $25 that I'm charging
Yeah.
for the t-shirts. But
Well, and
But-
that's something, and Melanie, I'm sure you can pipe in. That's something that I know we always talk about is how to do a fundraiser without it feeling like being a fundraiser. You're giving someone something fun to do, or a great t-shirt design, and how to change that mindset, and which is so important in this post-transplant journey when your community's been with you for so long already. That t-shirt sales, or Mel, what are some of those strategies that you've worked with people post-transplant and different types of fundraisers?
So what she said was perfect because it's so true. Her journey has been years. First, she really looked like, I really need this. I have oxygen. I need you. I need you to help save my life. Now she's looking better, but she still needs this funds. Educating people as you go along, and those strategies that you use is your knowledge of your community. She knows her community. Sometimes it's easier with long-term fundraising than it is for short-term. It doesn't seem like that would be the case, but if you are bringing your community along, and you have to keep in mind, you have to expand that community as well. So if you're engaging them and they're doing something, then they're having fun while they're supporting you. And that sounds like, oh, well, why should they have fun? I'm sick. No, they're your support, and that support is going to grow because they're going to continue to reach out on your behalf, because they could bring their niece and their nephew, and then their niece and nephew might get married and have kids and bring their friends. It's like I tell people about marathons. People who run marathons never run alone. They have a sharing section.
Mhm.
Anyone who's fundraising for medical expenses needs that sharing section. And you constantly have to continue to grow and expand. But in order to do that, you literally have to educate and engage as you move forward. And what that literally means is that you tell people, you give them updates. This is what's happening with me. Remember, at your comfort level, never give your soul away. You don't have to in order to fundraise. You're literally sharing your journey with other people, but at your comfort level. And then the engaging part, think about something that's going on in your community. If you don't want to have an event that you've committed yourself to do by yourself, what's happening in your community? Is there something at the library? Can I sell t-shirts? Do I have a book that I can go to the library and say, I want to sell these? Do I want to create journals that I can sell? What kind of hobbies do I have? Do I like making jewelry? All of these things are part of conversations that we have with our clients to help them figure out the best way forward, because they're the ones who are out in the communities. We're the person on the phone. We don't live where you live. We don't know what you know. We only know what you tell us.
Yeah. And like you said, it's sometimes it's about being able to offer that service, or so that people just don't think they're, oh, here's another donation, here's another donation. Make it fun and different and creative, which is so important when, we've had clients, specifically transplant clients, have been with us for 20 years. So they're constantly reinventing the wheel. And Pat, what about your post-transplant journey? I know we've talked a little bit about your concerns of hitting your insurance caps and how that works, and why are you still fundraising post-transplant?
Yeah. I have to say I'm not as aggressive as I was, and not to say I was particularly aggressive. Like Rachelle said, I have a good community through my social media, family, friends, and other people that I've come to know. And so that's been my primary way to reach out to people. But I found it actually interesting, and thank goodness I had the 3 years wait time ahead of time, because I was able to fundraise quite a bit then, and I was really sort of expecting a pretty big bump, like once my transplant actually came, and I was given or my wife was giving daily updates as to what was going on with me throughout the transplant process. But there really wasn't a whole lot after at the time of transplant and afterwards. You know, and you know, I would do a lot of the, you know, Giving Tuesday every year, that sort of thing. But the reality is, like you mentioned, you know, the out-of-pocket max, that you know, for most people, that's something that they don't really think about. They think, oh, you know, gosh, am I going to hit my deductible this year? My wife is typically very healthy as long as we've been married. I think maybe she's hit her deductible twice. Um, Me, on the other hand, I usually hit my deductible sometime in the first week of the year, and my out-of-pocket max by March, sometimes earlier. So it's not a if I'm going to hit my out-of-pocket
Yeah.
max, it is a when, and it's every single year. And that's with me not having been hospitalized even once since my transplant. That's without anything really out of the ordinary, just regular
Just basic
routine
upkeep.
stuff. Yeah. And I just received uh, my bill from the Cleveland Clinic for my March appointments. And again, that's all routine. There's one regular test that they do once a year, and then I see them twice a year. And there's like one regular test that they do, and then it's just the regular blood test. It's the seeing your getting a chest X-ray. It's getting an EKG. It's seeing the post-transplant team, and then once a year I see my cardiologist.
Mm-hmm.
All of that. My March bill that I just got was $2,019.88. And so that's the reality.
Yeah.
With everything going right.
Yeah.
That's still the reality.
Such a great point. I mean, and that's where, you know, they are the medical professionals and they have so much on their plates already. And they're talking to you about fundraising to be sure you can get that organ and get yourself to that point of transplantation. But then where is that cutoff and that lag afterwards? Because you still have, with everything going right and you leading a relatively healthy lifestyle, you're still getting $2,000 medical bills. And how do you do that upkeep? And I know for you too, like Rachelle had the pre and post of the 50-foot long oxygen tank and oxygen wire in the tank. And, you know, people could look at you, Pat, and I know you have a scar from your heart surgery, but people don't know looking at you that you still need to fundraise.
Yeah.
How do you keep people? I know you're not maybe necessarily aggressive, but how do you keep people in the fold with what you need to do? And
I post a lot of, you know, one of the things that I do, and it does show how my life has changed because of the transplant. But I run a lot of 5Ks. I did one a few weeks ago, and I'll put in a plug for the Hope Travels this weekend that
very
I'll be
nice, very
doing
nice.
another 5K for that. And I do those, but in those I honor the fact that I received a gift that is enabling me to do that, from my donor. And so, you know, everything that I post, essentially every time I post something on social media that is something that I would not have been able to do without the gift that my donor gave me, I put the hashtag thanks Bob on it, because my donor's name is Bob. So I just say thanks Bob for everything that I'm able to do that I was, you know, would not have been able to do otherwise.
That's amazing.
That's great, Pat, because that's so important. You know, people want to know that you're thankful. And again, like I said, you don't have to sell everything for yourself, but engaging them and giving them updates and telling them how you're doing and why you're still fundraising, just a little bit goes a long way. And you do that so well. And I mean, look at you. You look great. And people will see you and it's like, why should I give you money? Because I still need it.
Yeah.
And you tell
Yeah.
them why, and they
Yeah.
will. People are generous. During the pandemic, I was really surprised that the Giving Tuesday added a Giving May, and they exceeded their numbers. They did it twice in that year. And while everyone's struggling trying to figure out why am I locked away, they still gave tremendously. People are always surprising me. So it's a wonderful thing to see. And I love when everything goes so well.
And Melanie, is that conversation any different for you guys as client services from when you are with a client pre-transplant, during, post, to when you do just get someone starting with you post-transplant. Like how do you navigate those two fundraising journeys, and helping them find their community again?
So it kind of depends on the client. Like Rachelle said, she never had anyone talk with her about post-transplant. That's one of the things that I do because I talk about the journey. There's the beginning, there's the during, there's the end, and then there's another beginning. So it kind of depends on what kind of transplant that you have. I worked with someone who just joined us.
Yeah.
I think she was a client actually before I was here, and I inherited her, and I've always been very grateful. She had a heart transplant. I learned a lot working with her because she had a very active community. And now she has, I'm slowly moving her along because she's post-transplant, but she still needs to fundraise. And it gives her, and I'm sure Pat and Rachelle, a sense of peace to know that they do have the money. Pat's $2,000 bill that, he's hit his deductible. He still needs money. Where is this going to come from? He has it with Help Hope Live. So it helps to know that those funds are there. So with Linda Jara, she looks incredible. And I had to talk her into posting some of her incredible looking photos because a lot of our transplant clients think people will stop donating because you're looking better. It's similar to what you said. So that journey is not only working with our clients and teaching them about the outreach for fundraising, but kind of teaching them about themselves as well. We are not doctors, we're not therapists. We literally take those clues from our clients to try and help them and based on the experience that we've had. So it's really getting to know your client, telling them, let's go here, sometimes tough love, sometimes soft love, and sometimes just, hey, we need to do this. It's a matter of life and death. So each client is individual, but each journey is different. The beginning, you're trying to get someone to understand who is your community. We need to find out who that community is because you need to reach out to them. The during period when they've had their transplant is usually the time when those funds need to be spent that they've raised. So we're not really fundraising during the during period. After, depending on where they are and how they're recuperating, they still have some funds left and they might come back for those co-pays and those follow-ups, primarily for the travel and lodging. And then you have Rachelle and you have Pat who still have bills that they have to pay, and it doesn't go away. This is the beginning of a new journey. So now you are teaching them how to expand and continue to engage that community because so many people have already tapped everyone they know. How do I reach new people?
Yeah.
Do you want to create an annual event? Do you want to start selling something? Do I have any talent to sell anything? I've never made anything in my life. Again, it's about knowing your client and really helping to grow that relationship because you're part of their team. You are literally a team of more than one. So it's a lot to do and it's a lot to get to know. And it really takes a lot for the client to trust you because again, we are a voice on the phone.
Well, and I do want to take a minute, and Linda, I know you did just join us. If you're able to turn your camera on, it would be wonderful to have you join and hear your perspective.
I don't know why
it's not working. All right.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, absolutely. And so I want to introduce everyone to another one of our brand ambassadors and transplant clients, Linda Jara. Hopefully we should be able to get her camera working in a minute, but even so, I did hopefully. There you are.
Is that working?
Hi, Linda.
Okay.
Yes, there you are.
Hi, and I apologize for being late. I got held up at work of all days. So I do apologize for being late. And I kept saying, I gotta go, but something had to be filed today before I left. So
it happens. It happens. Are you able to, you're safely here joining us and talking. So I appreciate that you're able to join us a little bit.
Don't get seasick from me driving. But
oh geez. Well,
it's okay. I'm watching with phone in one hand, and so
well, yeah, don't worry about looking at us.
Attention.
Look at the road. But if you're able to share any insights, or I know Melanie just shared your story a little bit about how post-transplant, not feeling comfortable sharing the pictures of you really looking quite healthy, and yet still needing to fundraise, and Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and the one thing with me is I got sick very quickly. So I never looked sick, as opposed to people who were sick for a long time. So I was sick, and by the time I was sick and listed for heart transplant was a month, a month in between, or 2 months in between, and went on the LVAD about a month, 2.5 months after I was first told I was in heart failure. So everything was very quick for me, and to actually get that sick look, I never really had that opportunity. And it was 2015 when I first started with Help Hope Live. I just changed my picture recently. And that's the picture that's going out on my latest Hope in Action. And my biggest concern with Melanie, and I that's just when I logged on, was saying, people, I don't look sick in this anymore, quote unquote, I don't look sick in this anymore. And she said, well, that's going to be fine. That's going to be fine. And I changed it and I sent that out. And one of my really good friends who's always helped with my benefits said to me, you don't look sick in your new pictures. I just was like taken aback, because out of all the people that would have said something, I didn't think it would be somebody who has worked and has known and was there in the hospital, in the ICU, visiting me in the ICU, and was a teacher with me at the time, so I was just like, oh, if she's going to say that, what will other people say? But I was telling Melanie that picture just so happens to be from a day that I was at the mall with my niece, and we both got MAC makeovers, and I was taking pictures for my dating profile. So I was like, I better look good. So yeah, that was kind of how that went. And Melanie's like, well, we're just going to tell them that you were at the mall and you were, you got your makeover. So you looked, you looked better there, and you were dressed differently. So, and how my fundraising changed is one thing I was definitely doing a yearly benefit.
Well, she hit one of those spots.
I know.
So let me say this about
Melanie can
the
jump in a
picture.
little for Linda. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought she sent out the picture after I really talked her into it, because she really was concerned about just what happened. And for a close friend to do that was just like, oh no. But my thing with that is, when someone says that, it's because they don't know. And she has a really strong community. It really just means you need to tell them what's happening. So tell them about her day at the mall. It's like, look what we did. And I have never felt so good.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for all the support. You're still asking for the support. You're still thanking them for the support, but you're showing them how far you've come from where you started.
Yeah.
And she does that really well. And her community, I think, will accept it. Not everyone's community will. So you've got to be careful.
And so we did get a question that I think is really appropriate, in that for all three of you, and Pat, you explained it a little bit about what your bills look like, but we're kind of twofold. Were there any medical expenses or bills that you guys have seen post-transplant that you weren't expecting? And then how do you explain this to individuals who don't understand your medically sensitive world? And Pat, you went into how that $2,000 bill are maybe 5 or 6 different tests, and to try to break it down to your community as to what these bills are. So was there anything unexpected, and how do you then explain this to your community, what your expenses even are? How about Pat, you start, since it kind of, you explained what the bill was so well.
Yeah, I would say that there was nothing. Well, there was a bill that was pre-transplant that became post-transplant, that we had to deal with, and that was basically an 18th month fiasco. I won't go into details on it, but But in terms of just actually post-transplant, I think for me, it was this feeling like at first you have to go back, every couple of weeks, and then it stretches out to maybe a month, like once a month, and then it was 6 weeks, and then it was 2 months, then it was 3 months, and now I'm at 6 months, and I really, I, maybe I was naive, I guess, but I thought, oh, once I get to where I only have to go twice a year, like it's not going to be that bad, and I might actually not hit my out-of-pocket max, but I just told you in one visit it was over $2,000, and that's after insurance paid their part. So
Oh, geez.
it's just, it just is. I think that was the biggest surprise for me was, oh, yeah, it's just always going to be that way. And God forbid, I actually have complications at some point, like Rachelle with the skin cancer and things like that. That's a huge reality for transplant patients. It hasn't been my reality yet, but I would not be surprised if that doesn't come down the pike at some point. Other issues, because the reality is they say it, and it's true that transplant is a treatment, it is not a cure. It basically lets you trade one problem for a different set of problems. And so I've been fortunate that I've had minimal of the other problems that come as a result of the transplant, but it doesn't mean it's not going to come at some point. So we just kind of always have to be on our toes. We always have to be careful as we go. And, we just know that, we bring him this extra gift, and it's great, but it always comes with a, yeah, but, and, we're grateful for the time, because without it, there would be nothing to talk about. I wouldn't be here. But
Well, we're thankful you are here by all
Yes.
means. So hashtag thanks,
Likewise.
Bob. But Rachelle, were there any unexpected bills? And I mean, at what point, even after your transplant, did your skin cancer journey start?
Well, yeah, for the first time last year, I did not fulfill my maximum, and my maximum is 7,000. I think it's 7,000. So all of that's out of pocket money. And it wasn't until November that I actually filled that. So there's all those expenses, that 20% that adds up, with every time I go to the dermatologist or I have Mohs surgery, it's $1,000 or $2,000, and that's every month. So those are the expenses. And then the travel, we have to normally stay a night or two. And I mean, we're going to LA. We're not going to somewhere in Kansas City. We're going to LA, where it's not cheap to lodge there near the medical facility. And there was one expense that occurred while I was in LA right after the transplant, that was my air conditioning went out at my home. Where I live, the heat gets up to 110 in the summer. And I knew that I couldn't come back to that. It had to be fixed. We didn't have the funds for it. So that is one of those medical bills that really aren't what we call medical bills, but it is, I need it for my health. So I was able to pay for a new air conditioning unit out of my Help Hope Live fund. That was $11,000. That's a lot of money, but I needed it for my health. I don't do over 75 now, 75 degrees. So I have to keep it cool. It's, there've been a few big items that I've had to purchase as a result of being post-transplant. I needed a bed that would put me up, keep me up, because I had a double lung transplant. So my issue is my lungs and my breathing. So I had to be propped up. I sleep a little upward. And so that was one of the big expenses, to get a bed that could do that. And then not to mention all the little, medications and the trips to LA and of course the medical bills. They're high. I'm shocked that my insurance doesn't pay as more. And now I'm going to Medicare, So I'm in the process.
World.
I am clueless, and I'm meeting with someone next month. So
awesome. Linda, how about you with your heart transplant, and what was your post journey like in that?
As far as medical bills, pre-transplant, I had more unexpected than post. And one was for genetic testing, which I was told was going to be free by my medical team, and I received a bill for $15,000. So, and nothing conclusive came out of that. But post-transplant, when I was going, my hospital insisted that I would go to medical, did they say, what was it called? Financial services there. And they put me on medical assistance.
Okay.
And I did not know if I could do that because I was still planning on returning to work at the time. And so financial services said, yes, they could do that. And they set me up with medical assistance. And I was on medical assistance while, for that year after transplant. And it worked because my insurance, I was paying Pat mentioned the biopsies that you were getting once a week, and I was paying $150 per biopsy. And then when medical assistance kicked in, I was not paying anything. And so, like right now, when I meet people who are sick, I always say, get on medical assistance if you can, because it's going to be the best insurance you could get. I attempted to go back to work, and I had a failed attempt at returning to high school teaching. So I was able to, and I'm able to now able to have medical assistance now. So because I'm disabled by the state, I have Medicare and medical assistance. And so, I mean, so I guess I pay probably between both, I probably pay about $300 a month in insurance. So now I think Melanie might know better, but I think the expenses, well, I guess what I try to fundraise now, my yearly goal is about $5,000. Sometimes I go over that. For instance, this year, despite all of our best efforts, I had to have a tooth extracted and had an implant. So after 2 root canals on the same tooth, a cavity formed underneath the crown, and so I had to have a tooth extracted, and I got an implant. So the implant alone was $4,000. So, so, you know, there's years that are going to be more expensive.
Always.
And before I hit that little construction site and got knocked out, one of the things, and I don't know if you talked about this before, but I was having an in-person benefit every year until COVID hit. So that also changed the way I was raising money. And people really enjoyed that. People really enjoyed coming out, and I would have a band come and they would donate their time. And I had friends who would cook, and, you know, so it was really ended up being a really nice time. And so now I just do Giving Tuesday and then the Hope in Action. And they would be, they're just the 2 things. And the goal is really to try to raise $2,500 for each.
Nice.
And so far I'm successful. So that's kind of
And it's about making it simple for the community at this point that have been with you for so long. Maybe that's what's helping is just trying to keep it very straightforward and simple.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think part of what you just mentioned with the tooth extraction, I know for me, not, you know, before I started working at Help Hope Live, transplant world was very foreign. And one thing I've learned is just how important dental health is to the transplant community. And so that's something that I'm sure you've all had to explain to your communities through the years is dental health. And Rachelle with the skin cancer, there's so many byproducts of transplant that you would never think go with getting an organ transplant.
Yes.
And so, and then even just and I know for myself in outreach, when I'm talking to medical professionals, when you're trying to make someone think about fundraising, and it is all the way down to, Rachelle, as you said, that travel, even just down to the medical mileage rate, going back and forth to doctor's appointments, that stuff adds up. And Melanie, how are you having these conversations about just even that nitty gritty of what they're going to have to fundraise toward, or how are you explaining to people, yes, post-transplant is really that important?
So again, we have to take those cues from our clients because we're not doctors.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of experience having worked with hundreds of transplant clients. However, Linda's tooth extraction, that was something far out. She's successful with her outreach because shares her status update. She already had built up this community. So that's one of the things I try to explain to all of the clients. You have to have a community. It's hard to raise money without people.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, if you don't have those people, you're not going to raise and be successful. So we try and find that community. And the funny thing, people don't realize they have a community in a lot of instances. You don't go through life without building something. Everyone has something that you've had a connection with. So when people tell me, well, I don't have a community, and then I start talking to them, and we find out that they do have a community. They went to school. Oh, I'm still in contact with a few friends from high school, some people from elementary school. I don't have contact with anyone I went to elementary school with, but high school, which was far, far, far back. But
We're not getting into numbers here, Mel. Don't worry.
No,
it's
no.
fine.
College, work. People have worked in a variety of different places. Actually, it depends on whether you're a boomer or a Gen Z or a millennial, but you built up these relationships. And again, strangely enough, you might have been in touch with just one person. That one person might know 10 people that were connected to you somewhere or another, no matter how far apart. That's how you build that community. So that's what we talk about. No matter where you are in your journey, you have to find those people in those communities. So we try to kind of pinpoint that. With Linda, when COVID hit and we could no longer do Oktoberfest, which was fabulous, by the way, and so many people really enjoyed it, she started doing outreach through Hope in Action and also through Giving Tuesday with a letter, just a simple letter, an email, not even a letter that, that was posted, with a little picture. Hi, this is Linda. This is how I'm doing. I'm still doing this. Sorry, we can't do. Maybe we can go back to Oktoberfest, blah, blah, blah. So she knows her community, and that community expands. So if you can do that, you can continue to be successful with your fundraising outreach.
That's awesome. And just in the thoughtfulness of time as we were winding down our hour here in this wonderful conversation that I'm sure could go on for hours and hours. Rachelle, do you have any, lasting words for our audience? But even just anything that you've learned through this post-transplant fundraising that you could pass on to others?
Well, yeah, I love the fact that when Pat talked about doing a 5K, I mean, I could incorporate a 5K and get donations easily. I haven't done one yet. In fact, I have a son-in-law who's trying to get me to do a 5K with him. And then with Linda, that letter and like that yearly update, I think is a great idea, or a special event like once a year. I tend to put a lot of focus on my longiversary. I always do something special, and that's why I'm doing the t-shirts. This is my third longiversary, and I am so grateful and yada yada. But I make a big deal out of that, and that's a big fundraiser time for me. I love the help. What do we do in November? We do that
Giving
November
Tuesday.
Fundraiser, Giving Tuesday. That's also a big one for me. So I try and do a yearly event around my longiversary, and then the Giving Tuesday, and those are my two biggies. But I've got some great ideas with y'all, so thank you.
And I think that's important too, Rachelle, that even though, you guys are all brand ambassadors, you are all post-transplant, but you're still learning. And so we're here to help each other. And that's what this community is about as well, is learning and helping each other. Because as Melanie said, without community, where would you be? So I like
the idea of an event. And I had talked to you earlier about doing a pickleball tournament event. And, pickleball's the big thing right now. And I just couldn't get it together for this year. But that's going to be, I think, my next May fundraiser is
Nice.
pickleball.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I'll figure it
Awesome.
out. But
Yeah, you
getting
will. I
people,
know you will.
getting people involved and people
Yes,
having,
giving
like,
people
as
something
Melanie said,
fun to do
fun to
is
do.
really so that it doesn't just feel like, oh, we're going to another fundraiser. No, you're going and having a fun day out that
Yes.
happens to be a fundraiser.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
Thank you.
Pat, anything that you've learned or any advice for anyone who's thinking at this point post-transplant?
I think, like I said before, I have not been quite as aggressive or as active in fundraising, but I do try to take advantage of the special days that Help Hope Live has, and promote the, hey, no fees on any donations made on this day. But kind of going back to the title of our talk, this, that you don't look sick, and I kind of keep thinking about, well, that's kind of the point. Like, you have a transplant so that you get back to living and can live as normal a life as possible. That's really is the point. But there are all these other things that have to happen in order for that to be a reality, and those things cost money. You have to go to doctors, you have to have all sorts of tests to make sure that everything's still working right. Because if you don't, when I go to Cleveland Clinic, I said, oh, will I ever get to the point where I don't have to come back? And they say, no, because if you don't come see us, then we can't like keep an eye on you. We can't, it's too easy to just kind of forget all about it. And, oh, my anti-rejection medicine prescription ran out. Well, I'll probably be all right for a couple of days. No, you cannot do that. And that's, and really, frankly, that's another one of the things that really hasn't even been mentioned, in terms of the continuing costs. Like, every person who has ever received an organ transplant will take anti-rejection medicines for the rest of their life, period. End of story.
Yeah.
And they can
So
be costly.
it's just,
yeah.
it highlights again what we're up against, that it is a treatment, not a cure.
Yeah. And I think that's a great saying right there, that it is a treatment and not a cure. And I think even with the title and the thought of our talk of why don't you look sick? Why are you still why don't you look sick? Well, you can kind of retort now and say, because of your donations. So keep donating and I will continue to not look sick. I think, it is because of those donations that you guys all look as beautiful as you do. And so we want to continue those beautiful pictures, Linda. You're allowed to share them. We want them, keep them coming. But I really just want to say thank you to all of you for sharing your stories, being such great champions of Help Hope Live in our community. And Melanie, for all the work that you and your team does every single day for all of our clients. Again, this talk will be available to anyone who's interested. It will be on our YouTube page. I really appreciate everyone joining us today. It's a really important topic and we really just scraped the surface of it. So please, thank you again. And I think we just we'll close it here. They don't look sick because of everyone's donations. So hopefully we can continue the donations coming in. So thank you guys.
Can I say something?
Please do. Absolutely.
So as Sunny just said, we only scratched the surface. So if you are a client with Help Hope Live and you have your person in client services, bring this up with them. One of the things we love to do is try and figure out the best way forward with you. So have at it. We're here to help. Okay.
Perfect way to end it. We are here to help Hope Live. That is what we do. So thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day. And I appreciate y'all being here.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this.